Hello, this is Jingyan, and today we'll be looking at the most requested neurobiology topic, which is the human brain. There's essentially one main question in this field of study, which is how can one organ control the entirety of an individual? This question has been asked since the 18th century, which led to the creation of phrenology, the study of the physical structures of our skull or cranium to understand behavior. Although we now understand that this is pseudoscience, the questions raised in this field of study have allowed for the development of what is now neurobiology. To understand the parts of our brain, technology is used to map a visual image of its anatomy and activities. There are several ways to do this. In magnetic resonance imaging, strong magnetic fields align the hydrogen nuclei in our body, generating a signal that can then be mapped into an image, showing the structure of the brain. Functional magnetic resonance imaging was only discovered 20 years ago and is essentially an MRI that also shows specific regions of activity in the brain. As the patient is instructed to do a series of cognitive tasks, the scan monitors blood flow in the brain as neurons interact with each other. This creates a dynamic image of the brain detailing metabolic activity, revealing the specific interactions of neurons. For a positron emission tomography scan, the patient is first injected with a radioactive substance or tracer, which is then absorbed by the most chemically active tissues in the brain. Since these scans are all non-invasive, they are all prone to minor inaccuracies, although they have replaced the need for invasive surgery when understanding neuroanatomy. From these scans, we have discovered the three main sections of the human brain, which explains why we can carry out more complex processes than simpler animals. First is the reptilian system, or the old brain, which consists of the brainstem and cerebellum, which controls the most basic functions such as heart rate, breathing, and internal temperature. Next is the limbic system, or the mammalian brain. This comprises the famous hippocampus, amygdala, and hypothalamus. These allow us to form memories and experience emotions, which then dictate our conscious and subconscious behavior. Lastly is the neocortex, or the evolved brain. This is the most complex organ that has an almost infinite capacity for learning, and humans have a significantly larger percentage of this as compared to other animals. In addition to allowing for the development of language, imagination, and consciousness, the neocortex has been responsible for the evolution of human cultures. As you may have already noticed, the anatomy of the brain is closely linked with specific functions. This brings us to the theory of localization, which states that each section of the brain is responsible for a specific neural function. In a cliché and a logical sense, our brain can be likened to a machine, with each component controlling elements such as sensory perception, emotion, behavior, and cognition. To better understand the localization of function, biological and behavioral psychologists have looked at several examples. Perhaps the most well-known case study is one of Phineas Gage, a railroad worker who miraculously survived a freak accident involving a metal pole shooting up his left eye and out of his skull. Although he survived and even retained his cognitive abilities, his damaged left frontal lobe dramatically impacted his personality. Instead of being mild-tempered as he was previously, Gage became extremely unpleasant and vulgar. We now understand that the function of language is localized in the left frontal lobe, which explains Gage's drastic change in personality in terms of speech. Another famous experimental study was carried out in 2000 by McGrath et al. With taxi drivers. Right-handed male taxi drivers from London participated in this study, and MRI scans revealed that they had a larger posterior hippocampus compared to non-taxi drivers. In addition, those who had the most experience as taxi drivers had the largest posterior hippocampi. We can see that the posterior hippocampus is responsible for spatial memory, since taxi drivers are required to be extremely familiar with navigation. Another conclusion of the study is that the amount of gray matter increases with repetitive use of this function. This also links with the idea of neuroplasticity, which is another interesting concept in itself. So in this video, we have covered 3 points. First, neuroimaging produces scans showing the structure and the activities of the brain. The study of neuroanatomy reveals the main sections of the brain, and the theory of localization states that each section of the brain is responsible for a different function. Thank you for watching, and look out for the new videos coming out next week.